Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. What's right is right. Everybody wants to see less waste, fraud, and abuse in government. We hear it from every politician asking for power. They just don't deliver. And it should be easy. Estimates of what they call in politics WFA. That's how common it is. It has its own acronym. Waste, fraud, and abuse. The estimates are wild. Reports say anywhere from $100 to $500 billion. Another estimate says 5% of all global funding by the federal government is wasted. The OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, just reported that in 2022, the government spent $247 billion in improper payments. What does that mean? Payments made in error, duplicate, or without proper basis. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, which both sides rely on for government research, has a high alert list of programs and areas that need to be checked. The Department of Defense, Medicare, the prison system, food safety, cybersecurity, they're all there. Major concerns of mismanagement and waste, fraud, and abuse. But I have suspicions about what we're seeing here early on, and increasingly they are justified. Now, that list I just told you, the high alert list that the GAO does, do you know what's not on that priority list? USAID. Why? Well, one, it's relatively small. It's less than 1% of the federal budget. And by the way, its share of the budget has shrunk since Reagan, so it's not like it's rapidly growing. I'm not saying there isn't waste there, and the more you find, the better. I'm on board. And it's got a $44 billion budget, but that's nothing compared to the people on this list. Health and Human Services, $2.4 trillion. Department of Defense, $1.3 trillion. This is in 1 year. AID is not even in the top 10. It's not even close. And guess what? We spend more on federal prisons than we do on foreign aid every year. Think about that. On federal prisons, more than on foreign aid. Think about it. So, again, I can't think of a reason to be against efficiency efforts. But why start with USAID? And I think the answer is about who's looking, and that's Elon Musk. Now, the first reason is, from what I can glean, is it's low fruit. It's easy. USAID isn't attached to a big dog like Lockheed Martin or AT&T or Microsoft, all of whom feed at the government trough way more than USAID. And those companies have had real issues with hacking and cost overruns, which I'll tell you in a second. And then I got suspicious because this MAGA Pod Bros story that broke, of course, on Twitter, falsely claiming that USAID was funding Politico and other outlets with these huge amounts. They never break things that are correct. And sure enough, it wasn't correct. USAID wasn't feeding them in these huge amounts as suggested. So why did they get fed this story, and by whom? Again, I think it points to Elon Musk. And so then we started doing more reporting, and guess what comes out? Did you know that Elon Musk is one of the entities benefiting from USAID? Thousands of Starlink terminals from Musk's satellite internet company provided to Ukraine. We all know the story, right? Didn't you think he gave them all? Turns out he didn't. But it did give access to Musk's advanced internet system to people who needed it. Now, problem with that promise is he said only Ukraine would have access, not Russia. But now there's evidence and allegations that Russians did have access. They're military. So what did USAID do? They opened an investigation into Elon Musk this past September. You didn't know that, did you? USAID paid Politico only $40,000 in U.S. subscriptions in 2023, 2024. You want to end them? Fine. The whole entire federal government paid Politico $8 million for subscriptions in 2024. And by the way, a lot of Republicans were on their list of subscribers. But again, you want to get rid of it, fine. Guess how much Musk got from USAID after saying he was donating the terminals? He didn't donate all of them. USAID had to buy over 1,300 of them at $1,500 a piece. And the weird thing is, the terminals retail for $600. Musk made over $2 million in that deal from USAID. Why didn't he donate all of them? Why wasn't it disclosed that he's being investigated in connection with that? And how can it not have something to do with why he picked them first? Shouldn't he have to at least explain if it's a personal beef or something he learned about the agency while dealing with them? If you're not going to go after the big dogs, you're going to go after low fruit that's a fraction of the problem. And you have this problem with them and an obvious conflict of interest? This is why I say Musk should have been vetted. Not because I love process, I love bureaucracy. No, but because you want to make sure you have the right person doing the job. Because why aren't you going after the real alligators in the swamp? It was just announced by a watchdog group that the Department of Defense is going to now pay Lockheed Martin $2 trillion for the F-35 Lightning II program, the fighter jet. It was supposed to be $200 billion in the early 2000s. Talk about waste and abuse. Why so much? Why do we need it that much? This watchdog group cited the government's inability to control costs as the reason. So why don't you start there? Last year, the DHS awarded AT&T a $150 million contract for 5G services. But guess what? They get the contract, and then all of a sudden we learn the story that all of their customers' data was stolen in a hack in 2022, including dozens of federal agencies. Why don't you look into that contract? The DoD spends hundreds of millions in IT services for Microsoft. They've been plagued by high-profile hacks by China and Russia on their federal government computer network. Why don't you look into that? Give it to somebody else. They're getting hacked. They're losing our information. They're getting billions and trillions. So I like the mission, but I have questions. You remember that OMB memo that Trump issued that paused trillions in federal grants and financial assistance? And it had to be rescinded? A recent report found that nonprofits and healthcare providers are struggling to maintain their operations because of these freezes. And they help real people who need real help. People with disabilities, the Head Start programs, youth care in hospitals. I know. I'm not saying that Trump means to punish these people. I'm sure he doesn't want these things to happen. But it is what happens when you go too fast and you cut too much with someone who doesn't know what they're doing. Musk is a genius. He does amazing things. I had a Tesla. I get SpaceX. I think it's amazing. Starlink is amazing. What they're doing with healthcare is amazing. But who says he's got this way of doing efficiency? We don't know that. And we don't know much about him and his relationships with the government. And it's a mistake. He's got this anonymous group of minions, one of whom was just exposed as having access to our Treasury Department data while also being a fan of eugenics and other racist tropes. Who else is he connected to? Look, it's got to be about results and demanding action. I say it here every night. Talk is easy. You got to walk the walk the right way. And I'm going to keep paying attention for you because this is starting off in a way that may be well-intentioned, but it's getting increasingly suspicious. Now, I want to bring someone in who shares these suspicions, a Democratic member of the Doge caucus, okay, who says she has an exclusive announcement to make on our show, and I don't like it. But joining us now, Oregon member of Congress, Val Hoyle. First of all, Val, how you feeling? You okay? I know you've been sick like one-third of the country is.
Yeah, I had the flu. I'm over the flu, and I'm really pleased to be able to be here with you.
Well, Val, I'm happy to have you. It was good to see that you wanted to be part of the Doge caucus, that you wanted to be part of efficiency. It's certainly what the new generation of leadership is in. But you've come to a determination for yourself and a reason for it. Explain.
So the Doge caucus is just a group of Democrats, a few Democrats and Republicans who want to work together to find more efficiencies in government, to find fraud and waste, right? Because we want to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And let me be clear, I think most of my colleagues that are in this caucus, which, by the way, isn't working with Elon Musk, he's off on his own, they're operating in good faith. But fundamentally, I don't see how we can actually do this work when Elon Musk is blowing things up. It's like trying to replace your roof when someone's throwing dynamite through the window into your living room. It's just not possible. So I'm leaving the Doge caucus. I will continue to do the work to find efficiencies, but right now I just don't think it's possible with what's happening.
You have to stay, and here's why. You guys are going to be the first line of accountability. Like, you heard what I just said. Some of it will be new to you, some of it wasn't. I'm not saying that Musk is a bad guy, okay? I think he does amazing things. You have to vet somebody who's going to be in this position. Your first target can't be an agency that is investigating you, okay? I mean, this is this is political rule book 101. The reason it happened is because this guy doesn't understand. Okay, he's not part of this world. But now it's going to color all his efforts. You have to stay, Val, because everyone says you're a fair broker. And you guys are going to be the first line of defense to make sure that this is something that helps and doesn't just create a new problem. You can't leave, sorry.
Well, here's what I would say. If I thought that I had any influence or my Republican colleagues had influence, I'd stay. But we don't have influence. We're coming up with ideas. For instance, the Department of Defense. Great example. We have a guy who has contracts all throughout the government who's overseeing the Treasury Department that pays the bills for him and his competitors. It's absolutely unconscionable. But in the Department of Defense, nearly half their budget goes to contractors. Contractors who have no incentive and no accountability when they overcharge the government. So if I could control or even give feedback to Elon Musk that I thought he'd listen to, I'd stay. But I don't see that's productive because, again, he's just blowing up the system and he's accountable to nobody. President Trump handed over the keys to the White House, to the Treasury, to government, to an unelected billionaire. And, you know, it's quite frankly very disturbing.
So, look, this first flush is going to pass. Why not go to the Republicans and Democrats on it and say, look, let's lock arms and say we want to be part of this solution, but we're going to fight against you doing it outside of Congress, because most of the things they want to do on some level are going to need you guys anyway. You can't get rid of an agency without Congress. He can, of course, with the executive power, control how funding works, but not to the degree or the duration or the scope that he's trying to do. So it's going to wind up coming back to Congress anyway. Why not put your first effort there to see if you can get the entire caucus to say, we believe in the goal, but how you do it matters, and this guy's going to work with us or he's going to be against us?
So I talked to Representative Aaron Bean from Florida. He's one of the co-chairs, and said, look, here's why I feel like I have to leave. This is, you know, I feel like I'm moving deck chairs on the Titanic. That Elon Musk, via President Trump, right, is trying to take away the power of the purse from Congress. Now, I said to him, I will work with him. I was going to co-chair, you know, the Department of Defense VA Oversight Subcommittee with Derek Van Orden from Wisconsin. I told them both, I will still do that. I will still participate. But fundamentally, how do you fix things when you have people who are absolutely unaccountable to the representatives that people voted for? I'll continue to speak out. And look, in Congress, I'm more of a workhorse. I just get things done. I'm not one of the shiny people you're going to see doing a bunch of press conferences, but we will continue to focus on doing that work. It's just, how do we do that when things are being blown up? All of government, all of our payments, our Social Security numbers are handed over to Elon Musk and his minions who, as you pointed out, are pretty troublesome.
Yeah, we got to know more. But Hoyle, I know who you are. And you are seen as a new generation of leadership that wants to do things differently. That's why, very oddly, I am sitting on live television with you right now telling you shouldn't do what you want to do, which I know is unusual. But NewsNation is a different place. I mean, we're fighting for a different group of people here, for the independent critical thinkers that aren't tied to party. And I just think you're one of the fair brokers. And it's unfortunate if you're not part of this initiative because it's important. But I appreciate you making your determination and explaining it to our audience. And when you want to talk about what matters and what you're learning, you've got a platform here at NewsNation, even if you're not on the caucus.
Thank you. And I'm going to consider what you're saying. And you're right. We need to talk to people who feel left behind. And it isn't just Republicans. It isn't just Democrats. It isn't just independents. And I really appreciate you providing an audience for that.
Listen, you're welcome whenever you want. Val Hoyle, I'm sorry to say I cannot honor your decision to leave, but it is yours to make. We just need as many people who want to get on board with the positive change as we can. Good luck to you going forward. I'll speak to you again.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Take care, Val, and feel better. 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Yeah, I'm telling a member of Congress you can't quit the caucus. Why? Because we need people who want to do things better. And I get that this is upsetting and it's a high level of disruption. And I think that they're going too fast and they're not being smart enough about it. But that doesn't mean you don't want to be part of the solution. You need people who have the right motivation and the right tools to get it right, even when it's going wrong. Coming up, how does the big man see it? Bill O'Reilly knows this problem, knows what's been done in the past, and knows why this is resonating well, what we've seen so far with Musk & Co., with the American people. And I want his take on a couple other things that are very important to people that I don't give a damn about. Do any of you care if the president goes to the Super Bowl? If he wants to go, why can't he go? Next.
And he's accountable to nobody. President Trump handed over the keys to the White House, to the Treasury, to government, to an unelected billionaire. And, you know, it's quite frankly very disturbing.
Are you disturbed by what that Democratic member of Congress, Val Hoyle, is disturbed by? She's one of the people who joined the Doge caucus. Now she's thinking of leaving it. I tried to convince her not to. Let's bring in Bill O'Reilly to discuss the state of play with his early efforts and some other things that are in the mix. Good to see you, big man.
Okay, Cuomo, what's on your mind tonight?
So, being against what Musk is doing is a bad look, right? If you're not on board with getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, you're part of the problem. But, are you starting to scratch your head a little bit about why they didn't explain more about Musk and explain more about why he's doing and targeting what he is early on?
No. It's only 2.5 weeks into the Trump administration. I know it feels like 2.5 months. Donald Trump's not big on explaining. Look, I think this is just a hyped up story. It doesn't mean very much. I'm happy if Elon Musk uncovers wasteful spending as he has. I'd like him, as you suggest, to go into the Pentagon, which is absolutely the worst, and which is why I oppose Hegseth, because he's not going to do it. That's where it is just trillions of dollars of false spending, I call it. But you know what this is all about? This isn't about Elon Musk. This is about sabotaging Trump. Whatever Trump does, the Democratic Party and the Trump haters are going to find something bad with it. So I'd like to know if my tax money is going to Peru to pay for a trans comic book. I know it's small ball, but I'd like to know it, okay? I'd like to know if the crazy stuff that the Biden administration did, which they, $44 million on U.S. aid, and the list, if you go to Google it, is insane. All right, I want to know that. And then I didn't know that the Biden administration paid Politico, a so-called journalistic outfit, $8 million to cover up for Biden. That's what they did. They wouldn't run the Hunter Biden.
We don't know that that's what it was. We don't know that that's what they did. That's not the story. The story is the subscriptions, and a lot of Republicans were among their subscribers.
No. Their own employees of Politico said, the report is on the story, they would not run it. So just go do your research and you'll see. But what really caught my attention was the New York Times today. Okay, then you know the reporter on the story for Politico said they wouldn't print the story. We didn't know at the time
but the reason
that Politico was getting $8 million from Biden.
Yeah, but we don't know that that's why they didn't run the story. People don't run stories.
Okay. No, I run if I have a reporter, they bring the story, I run it. Okay. New York Times today, conspiracy about Politico. Then I knew the story was valid. As soon as you get the New York Times running interference for you, you know it's true. Okay? Okay. So Elon Musk, let's get back to Elon Musk. I met him one time at a Hollywood party, which I never go to. But the guy who was throwing it was doing business with me in the literary area. And he said, oh, please come up. We're going to have a lot of people up there. And I went for about a half hour. I sat next to Kate Hudson, a beautiful woman, who asked me if I smoked weed, which tells me that she had no idea who I was. Okay. And she was like, look, who's this guy? And I said, I don't drink. And I was passing up the wine. She goes, oh, I know.
And did you immediately say to her, no I will with you?
No, I did not, because I don't do that. All right? And I'm friends with her stepfather, Kurt Russell, who I really like. But anyway, I'm giving you a lot of background on Elon. So Elon Musk is there at the party. And we were introduced, and he just looked at me. He knew who I was, all right? But he had no questions, nothing to say. And I don't know a Tesla from an Oldsmobile, okay? I don't know cars. I can barely put gas in my car. It's a struggle, all right? And I knew he had the cars and he was going to space. And I was going to be a wise guy, but I just said, nice to meet you, Mr. Musk. I wish you great success in your ventures. And then I went back to talk to Kate Hudson, okay? It was much more entertaining. So I don't know anything about Musk. But if Musk is going to tell me, an American taxpayer, that the pinheads in Washington are wasting my hard-earned money, okay, then I want to listen. And I don't want any excuse. Yeah, I'm not worried that he's going to do a coup d'etat. I'm not worried because he doesn't have any power. He can't subpoena anybody. He just is an advisor. Right. He presents to Trump. Trump does what he wants. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I agree with all that.
And the Democrats...
I just see an unforced error.
One more point. All right, fine. It's a colossus of chaos in D.C. Unforced errors all day long. Anyway, the Democratic Party, here's a big mistake they're making. It is insulting, Cuomo, to you, to me, and to every single person watching us now who works for a living, to take our tax dollars, which we patriotically give, and spend it irresponsibly, steal it, or waste it.
I agree.
I want to know every dime. And if this Musk is fanatical enough to spend all his time rooting that out, I'm his friend. There you go.
I get it. Here's what I'll say, okay? Let me put it a different way for you. I am with you with everything you just said, okay? Somehow I know this clip is going to come back to haunt me. However, I think that the mission may get misdirected because Musk is going to muck it up. He picked the first agency to go after that just happened to be investigating him. That was a mistake because now his efforts seem conflicted. And then one of his guys turns out to be a whack job, and he gave him access to the treasury information. So I'm just saying the noble nature of the goal. You just don't want to mess it up in terms of how you're doing it. They should have vetted him. He should come out and give the conflicts. He should have told us that USAID paid him for all these Starlinks that he said he donated. Because now it makes it look, now you're giving them something to hit you with. That's all.
All right. All valid points. But this is a bigger thing. This is dismantling the corrupt swamp. Mm-hmm. And Trump doesn't, he's not a minutia guy. He doesn't care about this. He forged an alliance with Musk because Musk is rich and powerful. And Trump likes powerful people. Okay? And if Musk did A, B, and C wrong, unless it's a huge story, which it isn't right now, then Trump is okay. Just tell me who's wasting the money, and we'll go in and dismantle, like we did USAID. But I will say to the Trump administration, you will have no credibility with me, a fair man, in 6 months if you do not go into the Defense Department and look at that situation. You must do it.
They have to look at that GAO, whom everybody relies on when it's convenient. They have their high alert. The DOD is, of course, at the top of the list. They have 10. You need to go after some of them. If you want this to be legendary, as a legacy-minded person would, you got to go after the big dogs. You got to take on the big dogs. You got to take on the Lockheeds and AT&T and Microsoft. You got to take on the ones that cost us the most. We'll see if they do. I'll tell you where I agree with your analysis of going after Trump for the wrong reasons. Whether or not he goes to the Super Bowl. And here's why I'm bringing it up. Because I see it as a demonstration of this game of constantly trying to tear down your opponent. I had no idea a sitting president had never gone to the Super Bowl. I'm surprised by that. I don't know why anyone would want to make it a bad thing. What am I missing?
Well, you read my message of the day, obviously, when the morons at USA Today print this column that Trump does not reflect the values of the Super Bowl. Dumbest column I have read, and believe me, I've seen a lot of dumb columns, and that's posted on BillO'Reilly.com. It's free. You don't have to be a member. You just go in, you read the message of the day. So when you read that, you're absolutely right. These Trump haters, whatever he does, it doesn't matter whatever he does is going to be bad and wrong. And I had, my new book is called Confronting Evil. It'll be out in September. And it's on Amazon already. We need columns there. Putin's on a cover along with some of the real evildoers in our civilization. Anyway, I've had people go, well, where's Trump? I go, wait. These people that I'm writing about, Trump is little Bo Peep, okay? It's not even... And then I had right-wing nuts go, how come Biden's not on it? I said, Biden's not evil. He doesn't know what day it is. That's his problem. He's not evil. So our collective psyche in America has been so skewed by political hatred that we're getting now this kind of tailwind that is just insane. Yeah. It really is insane.
One of the best things.
I hope Trump has a good time at the game. Things. I hope he has a blast.
Yeah. I hope everybody has a good time. And I think that we should want our leaders doing things that are more common as an experience to what we're all enjoying in the country anyway. God forbid we all get together. It's the only reason I'm watching the game. The Bills aren't in it. It's why I'm watching. But I'll tell you what you're very right about.
I have only one worry.
What are you worried about?
That Trump is going to, that he's going to seize the bayous, the Bayou Teche. He's going to seize them, all right, and just like
make the Cajun Riviera.
Trump's going to go, Yeah, he's going to
the Cajun Riviera.
Condos, scare the alligators, but there may be a seizure during the game of some Louisiana territory. I'm a little worried about that, because he's done with Gaza. That's the 51st state, I think, now, right?
Yeah, it's right there. Well, it's either that or Greenland. I'll tell you where you're right for this audience. What we are doing here and why we've been doing it is part of the solution. I know people say it to you all the time. They say it to me all the time, but they're starting to say it less, which is, boy, you guys don't often agree on things, but it seems like you get along. I say, yeah, I do get along. Sometimes he's right on what the position is. Sometimes I don't agree with him, but I like him and I respect him. And how you disagree matters. This is like a new concept because we've been so conditioned to hate what we disagree with. And I think what we're doing at NewsNation is part of the solution, and I'm happy to do it with you. Thank you for being with me tonight.
I agree. Thanks for having me.
All right, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Coming up, is there more to the shutting down of USAID than meets the eye? Maybe, but here's the part that you haven't heard enough about, and that's why I asked Shelley to be on tonight. Michael Schellenberger, independent journalist, okay? It's one thing if you're giving away money. It's another thing if you are using taxpayer dollars to play dirty politics. Is there a legit reason to think that this agency was part of engineering one of Trump's impeachments? Schellenberger's digging in. What he has latest next. There's another theory for why USAID was the initial target for the Trump administration. Is there savings there to be had? I'm sure, but that's true everywhere. Why start with such an unwell-known place? Well, that's where Michael Schellenberger comes in. New reporting reveals that USAID and a CIA analyst were behind a project that later led to one of Trump's impeachments. Independent journalist Michael Schellenberger joins us to try to convince me that I should believe this. Shelley, always a pleasure. Good to see you, Mike.
Great to see you, Chris.
So, sell me on it. How much do you believe this?
Well, look, here's what we know. We know that USAID effectively created this organization called the Organized Crime and Corruption Research Project, Reporting Project, OCCRP, which nobody's heard of, but it teams up with well-known news media companies around the world We know that it would not exist had it not rerouted a State Department grant from its Narcotics Enforcement Division through USAID, and that USAID can sign off on all of the senior, has to sign off, has a requirement to sign off on all the senior staff and on the work plan. We also know that it did the foundational research that was essential to bringing the impeachment case against Trump in December of 2019. It was what the CIA whistleblower relied upon in his initial complaint in December of 2019. So those are the facts of it.
Wait, explain that part. Explain that part, Michael. Explain what they funded and how it's connected to what the CIA agent and who that was, what we know, because I thought it was the original guy was the British guy that was hired by the Oppo research place that Clinton had been working with, and he was collecting it from his sources. What are you believing now?
Yeah, I mean, this is the case of you remember, this is where Trump talks about the perfect phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky. So this is his second impeachment. Impeachment, yeah, of 2019. So this is basically a situation where the CIA person in the White House who had been left over by Obama writes a complaint describing alleged violation of the law. This was then picked up and the House impeached Trump. The Senate, of course, declined to hear it. But I think what's so interesting here is that this is an organization that's behind it, that's funded by USAID, that would not exist without USAID, engaging in what I think you have to consider to be domestic politics, which is absolutely forbidden. You have to remember that our intelligence agencies, our foreign policy establishment, of which USAID is a big part, it's not really an economic development agency. I think people misunderstand that part. It's really about soft power. It's about establishing the power of the United States in like an aggressive way, including in regime change. The head of this group, OCCRP, actually brags of helping to change the governments in 4 or 5 different countries, actually brags of the regime change. So this looks like regime change tactics that the CIA and USAID had done abroad being brought back home against Donald Trump.
So why did we need that? And what did they do that was on top of what we already knew? The call happened. It was recorded. There's no question that Giuliani was mucking around over there and that Trump absolutely connected the relationship with Ukraine to what they could do to help Giuliani's efforts. So why did they need any OOCRP or whatever they're called? And what do you think they added to the stew?
I mean, I think the latter is not something that you have a consensus on in both parties, obviously. I mean, it was a partisan vote. It was Democrats. There's no Republicans that they got in the House.
100%.
The Senate obviously didn't hear it. And, you know, Zelensky himself said he didn't feel pressured by Trump to go and dig up dirt on the Bidens. So that's just a matter of disagreement. It's a thin, I think if you look back retrospectively, it's a pretty thin case for impeachment. It's supposed to be high crimes and misdemeanors. So then you have to ask, well, where does it come from? And when you see that the two main organizations behind it are the CIA and USAID, which is basically considered a front-facing regime change organization for the U.S. government. CIA is covert. USAID is sort of the overt. For U.S. allies, it's propping up governments, it's doing work to support them. For countries that would get change in government, we're trying to interfere politically to overthrow them. That's what we do. That's what our global policy has been. Look, I mean, so one possibility, and I don't know that this is the reason, I haven't heard from my sources, but I mean, look, you know, you have an agency that was engaged in what appears to be domestic politics going all the way back to Trump's impeachment. Right. Could that have been one of the motives for why they decided that this was an organization that had to pay a very high price? I mean, it's really shutting down the whole organization. I think it stands as a warning that there's many of these deep state agencies, FBI, CIA, DHS, they were weaponized to engage in censorship, lawfare, and now we see potentially the impeachment, and the consequences for them for overreaching in that way means that they're getting shut down. So I think it's a quite Shakespearean turn of self-defeating behaviors.
Michael Schellenberger, I appreciate you. You make a compelling case, as always. It's good to have you.
Great to be with us.
All right, you can check out Schellenberger, obviously, on X, but he also has his Substack. He is one of the bright lights in digital media. They're not all the same. More is not always better. He is one of the good ones. Break 3 minutes, 45 seconds. Up next, this is a case that we've been on for a long time and for good reason. When you look at the forensics surrounding the death of Ellen Greenberg, it is really hard to understand how this woman from Philly, a young teacher, how this could have ever been considered a suicide. 20 stab wounds front and back of her body. First ruled a homicide, then changed. And it seems that it may be political, leading all the way to the man who was almost vice president, now governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro. The parents have questions. There's just been a change in the case that makes it even more suspicious. Brian Enton is down there doing reporting on it, and he got to the governor today. Wait until you hear what he said. All right, quick update on a story that I hope you start picking up on. This happened in 2011. 27-year-old Pennsylvania school teacher, Ellen Greenberg, found dead in the apartment she shared with her fiancé. Fiancé says, hey, I was working out at the gym and I got there, the door was locked. He broke it open, found Ellen dead on the floor in the kitchen with a knife sticking out of her chest. Very atypical mode of suicide. Ellen stabbed 20 times, 10 stabs in the back of her neck and head. Very rare mode of suicide. The pathologist performs the autopsy, says homicide, meaning death caused by person. Weeks later, gets changed to suicide. Why? Ellen's parents never understood it, never believed it, fought for years, got the case reopened, and wanted the murderer brought to justice. We had the Greenbergs on our show 2 years ago, and here's what they told me about the investigation and the attorney general who had been involved, who at the time was the man who is now Pennsylvania's governor, Josh Shapiro. Josh, do you think that your daughter was killed?
Yes. My daughter was a victim of a brutal homicide. She was also a victim of female abuse. She had many abusive wounds on her body in different stages of healing, and that has never been investigated.
The police and the Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania are not psychiatrists, and they are taking liberties where they have no right to.
So the AG was kind of the court of appeal for this, and that was then Josh Shapiro. Now, it would come out that maybe Shapiro should have passed on it altogether because of a conflict of interest with Ellen's fiancé's family. The original pathologist in the case has now changed his mind after Ellen's family was suing him, and now says the death was something other than suicide. What else could it be? Either you kill yourself or somebody else does it. And the death will now be reinvestigated. Enter senior national correspondent Brian Enton, who's been covering this case for years, and the woman who told me about it, NewsNation Law and Justice contributor, former FBI special agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. Brian is down in Philly working on a special about this. Brian, and your timing seems to be spot on.
Yeah, Chris, I first heard about this through you and Jennifer when you did the story. Been working on it for the last year now. This woman did not commit suicide. I can tell you that because I have gone over everything and I have talked to so many medical professionals, and it is literally impossible. 20 stab wounds, like you mentioned, to the front, in the chest, in the aorta, all in the head, in the back, and right into her spinal column. It is literally impossible. She wouldn't have been able to move if she stabbed herself in the spinal column. So the update is there was the big lawsuit in the courthouse behind me. The medical examiner changed his tune again. You said it. First he said homicide, then he said suicide. Now 14 years later, he says it was not a suicide. And now you bring in Governor Josh Shapiro. He was the attorney general. He reviewed the case, the reports that he has connections to Ellen Greenberg's fiance, Sam, and he has ignored all of our questions about it. We've been asking for months. We've texted, we've called, we've emailed. They will not even respond to us. So finally, we are able to talk to him today at a press conference. Look at this, Chris.
Do you think there should be a new criminal investigation?
Well, look, I don't think I should speak for the city of Philadelphia and why they chose to make the decision they did. There's nothing I wanted more than to give these parents some finality, some answers, some clarity. And we received more evidence, more information during the course of our investigation that sadly didn't show what they wanted it to show, but actually rather pointed to more data, more information that pointed toward a suicide. I'm hopeful that as this process goes forward, if any new information comes to bear, that it immediately be shared with the Chester County District Attorney and allow the DA there to conduct an investigation of that new material.
Look, it doesn't smell good. And the AG wasn't the case. This isn't who prosecuted it, obviously, but he probably should have passed because of the conflict. And Jennifer, what information could have come out that now the person who made the scientific finding on the body obviously hasn't accepted because they've changed their opinion?
Well, this is what's interesting, Chris. The whole reason it was changed in the first place was because the medical examiner was told that she was alone and that the door was locked and that there was proof that Sam entered the apartment with a witness. So that basically he entered in there and found her that way. Then that witness changed and said, listen, no, and gave a deposition and said, I wasn't anywhere near Sam when he went into that apartment. So now the whole reason that it was ruled a suicide was changed because nobody was there to witness her being found but Sam.
We're going to stay on it. We're going to stay on it for the family. We're going to stay on it for her. And we're going to stay it for the simple principle of justice. This doesn't make sense. As you said, Brian, stay on it any way I can help. Give you a platform for the reporting. I'm here. Cough and Defer, as always. Thank you for putting me on the trail. We'll be right back. I don't like what I have to report right now, which is that tonight is Dan Abrams' last show. And look, I'm really happy for Dan. I've never seen anybody in our business have the entrepreneurial success that he's had. He has been so far ahead of the rest of us in